So when we last left off here, Megatron got an upgrade from the Fallen and actually left his dimension and dived into the deeper depths of Decepticon space to another planet called Outpost Omega. However, we are talking about Earth, as we will get to finding out where Megatron is very soon here. This episode actually takes place instead of out of his head, considering the last one we covered an episode that was dedicated to Sick Mind, which was again the last part of this here. So with that being said here, let us begin with this new episode I like to call Fire and Wind. This episode opens up very simply. The Autobots are all out on patrol in nearby areas, discussing and pretty much taking away any energon from the Decepticons, stabilizing their energon supply. Meanwhile, Grimlock and Windblade are actually out together this time here, actually investigating a Decepticon energy signal and actually discovering the Harbinger. Grimlock actually is able to tear through the door while Windblade actually investigates. Considering Windblade is the smarter of the two, she actually begins hacking the ship and discovers a lot of its secrets here. Now, as they are hacking this, we would then go to the Decepticon warship. Starscream, Thundercracker, and Onslaught are actually planning against the Autobots. Unfortunately, that fool Lugnut actually did set them back a little bit here. Because again, without him, it just kind of feels like there really wasn't, it was just a waste of time, you know? And so, with that being said here, Starscream and Thundercracker actually come up with a decent plan to get rid of the Dinobot and Windblade herself. He thinks that if he can take out two of the heaviest hitters in their respective elements and, in all honesty, the backbones of the Autobot team here, he should be able to take down Prime a lot easier in future outcomes. And considering the sheer fact that Grimlock is the only one that can combat the Combaticons, this means that Bruticus will be the strongest force on the planet. And so with that being said here, this is where Soundwave actually picks up on the Harbinger signal. And so with that being said here, Starscream says, perfect, an opportunity to eliminate competition. And so, with that being said here, he asks Soundwave who's actually in there, and when Soundwave is actually able to pan the camera to the Harbinger, it then shows Grimlock and Windblade. So, Starscream sets in his plan, having Soundwave cut their communications, and so the warship departs to go to the same location as the Harbinger. Keep in mind, this is the other half of the Harbinger here, which does not contain the whatchamacallit, what am I talking about here? The immobilizer. That's what I'm trying to say here. It does not contain the immobilizer. So with that being said here, yeah, they're in the part where Starscream created his clones and everything, and the Autobots used that as the base in the future. So with that being said here, yeah, the Autobots simply find it a whole lot earlier. And before Grimlock can actually call Ratchet to discover or pretty much acknowledge the fact that, hey, they have protoforms here, his communicator actually doesn't work, and he's confused. He then asks his Windblade, hey, is your communications jammed too? And Windblade tries hers, contacts Optimus, RC, then Ratchet. And, well, unfortunately, yeah, their communications are jammed here. To which Grimlock says that can only mean one thing, and so they actually hear the warship overhead, and Grimlock actually seals the door and actually uses his Dinobot fire breath to weld it here, understanding they're now trapped trapped in between a rock and a hard place here. And so Starscream actually feels elated by this. He's got them cornered like rats here. And so this is where he has Skywarp actually teleport in. And so when Skywarp actually does this, he teleports in here. He is unfortunately met with a horrifying fate here. And again, this does show that Starscream is trying, but he's not thinking, 5 or 10 steps ahead. When Skywarp teleports in, Windblade and Grimlock immediately tear him to pieces. And he is barely able to get out of there in time. As a matter of fact, when he gets out of there, he's missing half of him. And so he gets half of him teleported out and, well, dies at Starscream's feet. To which Thundercracker and even Starscream are horrified by this. They tore that dude to pieces, ripped him limb from limb. And so Starscream then just tells the Decepticons to just open fire and destroy the vault within a minute. And so this actually happens. This is, Starscream trying his best here. The Combaticons, the Decepticon drones, the Viacons, and him and Thundercracker open fire in remembrance of Skywarp, laying into it as much as they can here. Meanwhile, we would also have another episode play out here, and that episode being Operation Breakdown. Yeah, I'm going to have these episodes actually happen at the same time here, so it gives an excuse to why the other Autobots are not there at the moment. However, Ratchet is able to stay at the base this time because Cliffjumper is alive here. So the Autobots rescuing Breakdown would actually be Optimus, Bumblebee, RC, Bulkhead, and Cliffjumper. So with that being said here, that actually goes around, I guess you could say just around the same here, except Knockout is the one to actually rescue Breakdown in this timeline along with Bulkhead. And so while they don't take the Autobots on their offer here, there is no fight to be had, and instead they're allowed to drive away peacefully. Meanwhile, Ratchet is desperately trying to contact Optimus here and eventually gets through. And so he tells him that he's lost communications with Grimlock and Windblade. And during this episode here, we actually go back to Grimlock and Windblade here. And so they're actually going blow for blow and toe-to-toe with the Decepticons here. Windblade is actually able to fight against Thundercracker and Starscream in an aerial duel, because now she does not have to deal with any surprise attacks from Skywarp, considering he's dead now. And so, with that being said here, the Combaticons are actually trying their best against Grimlock here. They turn the tides on them almost immediately, with Starscream not being able to enact his plan with Skywarp, hoping that Skywarp could easily ambush or maybe even grab Windblade and teleport her out there, or teleport one of them out there so that they could be killed individually. And so, with that being said here, with that plan not working, the Decepticons are immediately not only pushed back, but they're beaten badly. And this actually cements Grimlock and Windblade's affection and their chemistry for each other here, complementing each other, flirting while they're fighting against the other Decepticons here. And yeah, we do get another Grimlock versus Bruticus showdown. However, it gets cut short here because all of the Autobots are now arriving. Optimus, Cliffjumper, Bumblebee, Bulkhead, and RC all begin to lay cover fire, taking out any Viacons in the area that were, blasting at Windblade or Grimlock. And well, half of the Autobots help against Windblade, while the other half actually helps against Grimlock. We actually see Cliffjumper actually pull a Jazz in this situation, saying that he wants to try exactly what Jazz did, and jumps on the back of Bruticus, saying that this is payback time. I guess you could say from the Rise of the Darksprite game, where Cliffjumper tried it and failed here. And so Cliffjumper jumps on the back here and lays into Bruticus's head with his blaster and fist respectively here. And so Starscream calls for a full retreat, having them get out of there immediately, with Grimlock and Windblade now going back to base to get repairs by Ratchet. And so this is where one other thing happens. They decide to confiscate whatever they find in the Harbinger. They even take Starscream's cloning pods, which will come into effect very, very soon. Yeah. I got plans for it, but y'all not gonna know it yet. So with that being said here, we then pick up to our next episode. And actually, we would actually get Shadow Zone, but a little bit differently here. This episode I call Double Trouble here. You see, we pick up with Megatron, flying through space with his new body as he, was upgraded by the Fallen, as I said earlier. And he lands on Outpost Omega. And he's greeted by two Decepticons that we all know well and love. Skyquake and Dreadwing. And so he asks them, he needs them for the cause. He says that they'll be heading back to Earth, and he wants them to be his enforcers, and that no matter what happens, to stay on track. And so they both salute their master, and Megatron uses his Dark Energon and pumps their veins full of it here, actually making them feel stronger, faster, tougher than they were before. And again, a great callback to War for Cybertron, where Barricade and Brawl were the ones in that situation. Crazy, ain't it? And so, with that being said here, they each transform, with obviously them being in Cybertronian jet forms, which I think should have been emphasized in the original. Not all, Decepticons were vehicleists. I mean, obviously everyone had a Cybertronian vehicle form, right? I mean, it's kind of just a no-brainer here. And so, they all take off and, well, they fly. Now, the next episode we have to talk about is Crisscross, and this is where I would actually have a change here. Now, Crisscross is when Arachnid and RC, right, go at it here. However, with Sierra on part of the team in this timeline here, this actually involves Cliffjumper here, to which I would actually like this episode to have not only just RC, but Cliffjumper as well here. Considering, again, now that she has, Arachnid as Jack's mom, this could actually work out with Sierra and Jack's relationship, as well as RC and Cliffjumper's future relationship as well here. So, with that being said, that plays out the same here. The next episode we have is Metal Attraction, and that also plays the same here, except instead of having RC and RC and Bulkhead, it's RC and Cliffjumper, and this is where they kind of cement themselves as a relationship amongst the Autobot ranks, along with Grimlock and Windblade having theirs here. The next episode we have is Rock Bottom. And in this one, I would actually have it be a Grimlock and Optimus episode here. This, again, is to work out their issues here. You see, Grimlock and Optimus both go to this mine to investigate it. It's an old Decepticon mine. They expect nothing of it here. However, in this one, it's Starscream and Thundercracker here. Starscream is absolutely livid. He doesn't even know how to get this done, and he wants to get it done here. And Thundercracker is trying to console him, telling him that he had all these plans before when he took over the reins for the Decepticons. What's stopping him now? And to which Starscream says it feels harder than it should be. He doesn't know if he's panicking. He doesn't know if he's, maybe he just doesn't have that motivation to take over anymore. And to which Thundercracker says they don't even know where Megatron is. He's his second in command, and he should be acting like it. And so Starscream eventually does pull himself together, okay? And, well, this is where Optimus and Grimlock spot them, with Grimlock kind of leaning against the wall like, so we're going to crush him now? And Optimus does try to get Starscream to reconsider, asking him to turn, if you will, here. And so, with that being said here, it doesn't work out for Prime and Grimlock in this situation, as they do get buried in here. However, it's not as bad as the original. As well, while they are, trying to communicate with the Autobots, and Grimlock is the one mainly holding up the entire cave from collapsing pretty easily here, he does go off on Optimus here, calling him soft, calling him weak here. And this is where they have these old issues again. Grimlock's ideology of how leadership should be versus how Optimus wants to lead here. And so they have this spark to sparking, you will. And he asks Grimlock what's really wrong with him. And this is where Grimlock does have a moment of vulnerability with Optimus. He tells him that he felt like Optimus never really valued him in ways that he thought, Jazz, Alita, and even Ultra Magnus were valued as his lieutenants. He always felt the lesser of the group here. And Optimus, again, listens to him thoughtfully here. He tells Grimlock that he always considered him, that he never should have thought about that. This is why he was always put in charge of Iacon security, commanding commanders. But Grimlock, again, goes into detail. You didn't listen to him when the Decepticons were always at full strength, and he analyzed it. You didn't even bother looking at the video footage he gave him, or that he gave you. And he says that Optimus never listened to him because he thought he was always about strength. And so Optimus does think about it here, and he apologizes to Grimlock for not listening to him as he should have. And he says that he wants to do better. He wants to do better not only by him, but by all the other Autobots, and do better to himself. Into which Grimlock actually finds the strength to toss the rest of this cave off of them. And so they are greeted by the Autobots with a newfound respect for each other. And so the episodes of Partners actually does not happen in this timeline. You see, Arachnid and Starscream, while they may argue for leadership here, or argue that their motives are the best here, and to be kind of honest, I don't think Arachnid will listen to Starscream, even if he was a bit more formidable in this timeline here. It's Arachnid, for crying out loud here. Arachnid just simply has to buy time here until it's appropriate. However, it gets interrupted when Soundwave receives a transmission from Megatron, to which everyone walks to the outside decks of the ship here, and so Megatron descends along with Skyquake and Dreadwing, now more imposing and tougher than ever, and he tells his Decepticons they have much, much work to do. And so he begins to explain his plan, that he met the prime of primes, a god amongst gods. The fallen himself has given him this power, and he reveals the dark spark within him. And so the first thing he wants to do is not only test his might against the Autobots, but to get materials to build himself, or to build an interdimensional bridge at the greatest point of humanity's own destruction. And so, with that being said here, he does exactly that. Getting the materials he needs for a interdimensional space bridge. And so the first thing he does is attack a military base, to which Prime is called for. And this actually, has the entire Autobot team there. Minus Ratchet, obviously, for, obvious reasons here. He's a medic. We don't need him out there. And so, Megatron asks the Combaticons to transform and tells Skyquake and Dreadwing to hold off the rest of the Autobots while he confronts Prime and Grimlock himself in a 2-on-1 situation here. Thanks to their training, the Autobots are actually able to at least 3 against 1 Bruticus here and actually put up a decent fight, actually stalemating him the best they can. However, Bulkhead and Cliffjumper are the ones taking on Skyquake and Dreadwing, and they are not doing so hot here. They're able to get their hits in, but again, these are two of the biggest and some of the strongest Decepticons that even Optimus had a hard time beating. And they are not doing so well here. Factor in the fact that they have a slight Dark Energon boost, and yeah, they're on the back foot for a large majority of the fight here. However, Megatron makes a Dark Energon cage around him, Optimus, and Grimlock, and so the 2 against 1 actually happens, with Grimlock actually being shocked that Megatron is matching him in strength here. To which Megatron talks to Grimlock as he pins Optimus to the wall of this Dark Energon cage with a Dark Energon construct, and tells the Dinobot he should thank him before running at him to engage in a 1-on-1 fight. Grimlock actually goes again, goes head to head or blow for blow with Megatron in this situation, and asks him, "What do you mean?" To which Megatron begins to recount the times that Grimlock has embarrassed him, has humiliated him. The fact that he, of all people, some Dinobot, the same person who fought him in the pits of Kaon, was able to rise up to such new levels and actually humiliate him in a way he never thought he could. He talks about the time Grimlock beat him down so badly that he had a fear of him to the point where he upgraded himself into a triple changer. And even then, it wasn't enough. Now he has the power of the gods. And he says this while making a Dark Energon hammer and smacking Grimlock into the barrier of the Dark Energon barrier, electrocuting him and Optimus, who's still restrained to it as well. And this is where Grimlock begins to get angry. And he says that maybe Megatron should have just gotten stronger instead of asking for help. To which Grimlock rage builds as he asks Megatron where did he score the upgrade. And this is where Megatron says he has a new master. To which he calls Megatron pathetic, saying that he thought Megatron served no one but himself. And this actually does make Megatron think for a minute, but he shakes this off and actually makes two Dark Energon cannons and begins to lay into Grimlock ferociously. Grimlock is able to put up his shield in time, but again, it's pushing him further and further back into the barrier. And this gets him angry. He's being overpowered, and in a one-sided fashion. He's usually the strongest being out there. And this makes him angrier and angrier and angrier. Coupled with the fact that the Decepticons are overwhelming the Autobots here, and he actually sees Windblade get clocked by Bruticus, causing her to, crash into the ground pretty hard. This sets Grimlock into a whole new level of rage here. And in all honesty, I think it would be like Infernape's Blaze, where he just straight up erupts into this rage-filled anger and power here. And Megatron is a bit taken aback by himself. And that, rage, the sheer force of it, destroys the Dark Energon cage and sends a shockwave throughout the battlefield here, knocking the Combaticons or knocking Bruticus back a couple feet here, and knocking Skyquake and Dreadwing, despite their amp, on their backs and has them tumbling as well here. And this is where Grimlock gets one solid, amped up Sonic Painwave punch on Megatron, and it rocks him to his core. It even shakes the Darkspark itself here, and it sends him flying so far, so fast even, that Megatron has no chance to recover, and he straight up just flies through the military base, causing multiple explosions in some anime type fashion here. And Megatron then reports that, asks Knockout for the report that do they have what they need. Knockout says yes. And when Megatron gets up, he then buckles slightly and sees that there is a dent in his Unutrium armor and says that this isn't over, Dinobots. And this is where he transforms and flees. With the rest of the Decepticons transforming into their respective vehicle modes, yes, Skyquake and Dreadwing do have their own, Earthbound vehicle modes here. I think it would still be the same, but obviously we know the difference between the two, right? And so they transform and retreat as well here, with the Autobots now having to calm down a rage-filled and pissed off Grimlock. And that's going to leave it off here today, you guys. Please comment down below. Let me know what you want to actually name this new state of rage that Grimlock has here that he simply cannot control just yet. So, that being said, hope you guys have a blessed day, and I'll see you guys later for another part. Peace.